Have you ever stood in a garden, watching a flower bud, willing it to bloom faster because you're desperate to see its beauty? Or perhaps you've planted seeds and found yourself digging them up every few days, checking if they're growing, only to damage the very process you're trying to encourage. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. There's something profoundly unsettling about waiting, isn't there? Especially when we've prayed, believed, declared our faith, and yet silence. The doors remain closed, the path stays hidden, and that miracle we've been expecting seems perpetually delayed. Has this ever happened to you? You've done everything right spiritually, yet God appears to have gone completely silent, leaving you wondering if your prayers have been lost somewhere in the cosmic void. What if I told you that everything you think you know about divine timing is backwards? What if that silence you're experiencing isn't abandonment, but actually the highest form of divine love? What if those delays aren't punishments, but sacred protection? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might completely transform how you understand God's timing in your life. Think about it. Nature never rushes. The flower doesn't anxiously pace, wondering when it will bloom. The seed doesn't panic in the darkness of the soil, demanding immediate sunlight. The sun doesn't race across the sky, trying to reach tomorrow faster. Only human beings, in our spiritual immaturity, believe things should happen according to our timeline rather than divine timing. But here's the mystery that most people miss. While we're checking our watches and tapping our feet, God isn't improvising. The Spirit never arrives late, never forgets, never makes mistakes. You see, there's a profound difference between the clock hanging on your wall and the eternal timepiece that governs the universe. Your human clock measures seconds, minutes, hours. It creates anxiety, deadlines, and that gnawing feeling that somehow you're running out of time. But God's clock operates on an entirely different frequency. It measures spiritual readiness, consciousness alignment, and divine synchronicity. When these two timepieces seem out of sync, most people assume God has forgotten them. But what if God's silence isn't absence, but presence in its purest form? What if those moments when heaven seems deaf to your cries are actually when the most profound spiritual work is happening in realms you cannot see? The truth is, when God appears quiet, it's often because he's working at depths your conscious mind cannot fathom, orchestrating circumstances and preparing you for blessings that would overwhelm you if they arrived prematurely. Right now, as you're watching this, there are invisible tides carrying your good toward you through channels you cannot perceive. There are divine appointments being arranged, spiritual foundations being laid, and perfect timing being calibrated for your highest benefit. The question isn't whether your prayers have been heard. They have. The question is whether you're ready to understand why the answer hasn't arrived in the form or time frame you expected. And more importantly, whether you're spiritually mature enough to recognize the profound transformation that's already taking place within your unconsciousness. If you're someone who values this kind of deep spiritual insight that actually transforms how you live rather than just how you think, I'd be honored to have you subscribe to this channel. We're building a community of souls who understand that there's profound wisdom available for navigating life's timing with grace and trust. Here's a revelation that might shift everything for you. Every single prayer you've ever whispered, every desire your heart has held, every dream that's kept you awake at night, it has already been received, not just heard, but actually conceived in the spiritual realm. Think of it like a cosmic pregnancy. The moment you genuinely asked, something was planted in the invisible dimension of divine reality. But just like human pregnancy, there's a gestation period required before that spiritual conception can manifest in your physical experience. The delay you're experiencing isn't God saying no, it's God saying, not yet, because I love you too, much to give you something you're not ready to sustain. This is where most people get it completely wrong. They interpret divine timing as divine rejection, when it's actually divine protection. Your consciousness, your emotional maturity, your spiritual foundation. All of these need to expand to match the magnitude of what you've requested. If you received certain blessings prematurely, they could actually derail your journey rather than enhance it. Consider this powerful analogy. God's timing operates like the most sophisticated train system in existence. You're traveling on the track of your soul's evolution, and everything that belongs to you is waiting at perfectly orchestrated stations along your route. The mistake most people make is getting off the train too early. Fear whispers that the train is taking too long, impatience suggests you should walk the rest of the way, and doubt convinces you that maybe you're on the wrong track entirely. But here's the hidden truth. Behind these divine delays, while you're traveling, the stations themselves are being prepared. The people who need to be there are being guided into position. The circumstances that must align are being adjusted. The resources required are being gathered. Your spiritual capacity is being enlarged. This isn't a static process where you're simply waiting for something external to happen. You are being transformed from the inside out to become someone who can receive, maintain, and properly steward what's coming. The profound impact of understanding this shift in perspective cannot be overstated. When you realize that delay equals preparation rather than rejection, your entire relationship with time changes. You stop frantically checking the schedule and start enjoying the journey. You begin to see each day not as another day of waiting, but as another day of becoming. The anxiety dissolves because you understand you're not behind schedule. You're exactly where you need to be for the next phase of your spiritual evolution. This is why some people seem to effortlessly attract the very things you've been struggling to manifest. It's not that they're more deserving or that God plays favorites. They've simply developed the consciousness that matches their desires. Their internal train has reached the station where their external good was waiting. Behind the scenes of every overnight success is usually years of invisible growth, character development, and spiritual alignment. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because there's something else happening during these apparent delays that most people completely miss. While you're wondering why nothing seems to be moving in your external world, there's an entire orchestration taking place in dimensions you cannot see. Doors that need to open are being unlocked. Hearts that need to soften are being prepared. Minds that need to change are being influenced. Circumstances that seemed impossible are being rearranged. Write in the comments, "I trust divine timing," if this perspective is resonating with your current journey. This is where the real magic happens, and it's something that will completely revolutionize your understanding of how the universe operates on your behalf. Think about the most intricate symphony you've ever heard. Every instrument has to come in at precisely the right moment for the music to create its intended impact. Your life operates under the same principle, except the conductor is divine intelligence, and the instruments are people, circumstances, opportunities, and even challenges that are all being orchestrated for your ultimate benefit. The hidden truth that transforms everything is this. While you're focused on what hasn't happened yet, God is busy coordinating a level of synchronicity that would blow your mind if you could see it from His perspective. That person who will open the door to your next opportunity is being guided through their own journey, right now making decisions that will eventually intersect with yours. The resources you need are being moved into position through a chain of events that started long before you even knew you needed them. Behind the scenes of your apparent waiting period, there's an invisible network of divine appointments being scheduled. The mentor who will change your perspective is being prepared through their own experiences. The breakthrough idea that will solve your problem is being downloaded into someone's consciousness. The circumstances that seem completely unrelated to your situation are being woven together into a tapestry of perfect timing that will leave you speechless when it all comes together. This is why rushing ahead of divine timing always creates complications rather than solutions. When you force a door open before all the elements are aligned, you often find yourself in situations that require constant effort to maintain. It's like trying to hold together a puzzle where the pieces don't quite fit. You can make it work temporarily, but it's exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. Authentic manifestations, on the other hand, flow naturally because every component has been perfectly positioned. Your mindset during this preparation phase is absolutely crucial because it's actually shaping what you'll receive. Every day you choose faith over fear. Every moment you select gratitude over complaint. Every decision to trust the process rather than force the outcome. These aren't just good spiritual practices. They're actively programming your consciousness to match the frequency of your desired reality. You're literally being transformed from someone who wants something into someone who is ready to receive and maintain it. The revelations that come during these waiting periods often turn out to be more valuable than the original thing you were asking for. You discover strength you didn't know you had. You develop patience that becomes a superpower in other areas of your life. You learn to distinguish between your ego's demands and your soul's authentic desires. You build unshakable trust in a process that works perfectly even when you can't see how. What's fascinating is that many people, when they finally receive what they've been waiting for, realize that the person they've become through the waiting process was actually the real gift. The external manifestation becomes almost secondary to the internal transformation that had to occur to make it possible. This is the profound difference between getting what you want and becoming who you're meant to be, and divine timing ensures you get both. The journey itself becomes the destination when you understand that every delay is actually an advancement in disguise. Every closed door is redirecting you toward a better opportunity. Every not yet is protecting you from settling for less than what's truly meant for you. Your spiritual evolution requires these apparent detours because they're not detours at all. They're the most direct path to your highest good. But there's something even deeper happening during these sacred pauses that most people never consider, something that will completely shift how you view the relationship between your prayers and their answers. Write in the comments, "I see the bigger picture," if you're starting to understand how divine timing is actually working in your favor right now. Something extraordinary happens when you shift your perspective from viewing waiting as emptiness to recognizing it as the most active, creative period of your spiritual journey. Think about pregnancy for a moment. During those 9 months, would you ever say that nothing is happening? Of course not. There's constant, miraculous development occurring every single day, even though it's completely invisible to the outside world. The mother isn't just passively waiting, she's actively nurturing, protecting, and preparing for what's coming. You're spiritual. Waiting periods operate on exactly the same principle. Right now, in the invisible realm of consciousness, there's active gestation happening. The seeds of your prayers are developing roots, gaining strength, and forming the foundation that will support their eventual manifestation. Just as a mother trusts her body's wisdom to bring forth life at exactly the right moment, you're being called to trust the spiritual process that's nurturing your desires into reality. This is where most people sabotage their own miracles. They mistake the quiet internal work for inactivity. They interpret the lack of external movement as evidence that nothing is happening. But the most profound transformations always occur in silence, in darkness, in that sacred space where divine creativity can work without interference. Every day of apparent waiting is actually a day of invisible progress, building momentum that will eventually explode into your visible experience with perfect timing. If this Exploration of divine timing touched something real in your heart and helped you see your current season from a higher perspective. That like button is your way of saying, "This message was meant for me." It also helps this content find others who need to understand that their waiting isn't punishment, it's preparation. The decisions you make during these gestation periods are absolutely critical because they determine the quality and sustainability of what you'll eventually receive. A mother who smokes, drinks, or neglects her health during pregnancy affects the development of her child. Similarly, when you feed your mind with doubt, anxiety, or impatience during your spiritual pregnancy, you're potentially compromising the very thing you're trying to bring forth. Here's a revelation that will completely transform your relationship with divine silence. When God seems quiet, it's not because he's absent or uninterested. It's actually the highest expression of his love for you. Think about it. Noise creates distraction, interference, and confusion. Silence creates space for deep, uninterrupted work to occur. When a surgeon operates, the operating room is kept as quiet as possible so they can focus completely on the intricate work at hand. God's silence is his operating room. During these quiet periods, there's profound spiritual surgery happening within your consciousness. Limiting beliefs are being removed. Old patterns that would sabotage your success are being dissolved. Your capacity to receive is being expanded. Your faith muscles are being strengthened. Your trust in the process is being refined. This delicate work requires an environment free from the chaos of constant external validation or dramatic signs. The impact of understanding this shift cannot be overstated. When you realize that silence equals active love rather than passive neglect, everything changes. You stop interpreting quiet seasons as punishment and start recognizing them as privileges. You're being given the space to grow, to develop, to become someone worthy of what you've asked for. Behind the scenes of every divine silence, there's intensive preparation happening, both within you and in the circumstances surrounding your life. Your journey through these silent seasons is actually training you for something far greater than what you originally requested. You're learning to operate from faith rather than sight, to trust in invisible realities rather than demanding constant proof. You're developing the spiritual maturity that will allow you to handle not just this blessing, but every blessing that comes after it. The silence is graduating you from spiritual kindergarten to advanced levels of consciousness. What's particularly beautiful about these periods is how they reveal the true nature of your relationship with the divine. Anyone can maintain faith when things are obviously moving in their favor, but it takes real spiritual depth to remain confident, grateful, and expectant when there's no external evidence that anything is happening. This is where authentic transformation occurs, not in the getting, but in the growing that prepares you for the getting. Now, I want to explore something that might surprise you about how this divine silence actually communicates more clearly than any audible voice ever could, and why learning to interpret this celestial language is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. Write in the comments, "I embrace the silence," if you're beginning to see how God's quiet seasons are actually expressions of his deepest care for your spiritual development. The most profound spiritual communications rarely arrive with fanfare or dramatic announcements. In fact, if you're constantly looking for God to speak through earthquakes, lightning bolts, or burning bushes, you might be missing the very guidance that's trying to reach you right now. The biblical story of Elijah perfectly illustrates this principle. When he was desperately seeking God's direction, the divine presence wasn't found in the powerful wind that shattered rocks, nor in the earthquake that shook the ground, nor even in the consuming fire. God's voice came as a gentle whisper, so subtle that Elijah had to strain to hear it. This reveals something crucial about the nature of divine communication that most people completely overlook. The louder the external noise in your life, the quieter God's voice becomes, not because he's playing hard to get, but because spiritual guidance operates on a frequency that requires inner stillness to receive. Your intuition, that gentle knowing that surfaces when your mind is calm, those seemingly random thoughts that provide perfect solutions, the sudden peace that settles over you when you're making the right decision. These are all forms of divine communication that bypass your analytical mind and speak directly to your spirit. The transformation that occurs when you learn to recognize and trust these subtle promptings is extraordinary. Instead of waiting for dramatic signs or seeking constant external validation, you begin to develop an intimate, ongoing conversation with divine wisdom. You start making decisions from a place of inner knowing rather than external pressure. Your life begins to flow with a natural rhythm that feels effortless because you're moving in harmony with spiritual currents rather than fighting against them. But here's where most people get tripped up in their spiritual journey. They want the fruit without understanding the root system that makes it possible. Every magnificent tree you've ever admired spent years developing an underground network that you never see. These roots, growing in complete darkness, often extend further than the visible branches above ground. Without this hidden foundation, the tree would topple at the first strong wind. Your spiritual manifestations follow exactly the same principle. Before anything can appear in your visible experience with stability and permanence, there must be a corresponding root system established in the invisible realm of consciousness. This is why rushing toward quick fixes or surface-level solutions rarely creates lasting change. You might get temporary results, but without the proper foundation, they crumble under pressure. The hidden truth behind every sustainable success story is years of invisible development that no one sees or celebrates. Character building, mindset shifts, spiritual practices, and internal work that happens behind the scenes. This is where real transformation occurs. The person who seems to have an overnight success has usually spent countless hours in the darkness of preparation, developing the inner strength necessary to handle outer achievement. Your current season of apparent waiting is actually your root-growing phase. While others might see nothing happening in your external circumstances, there's profound development occurring in dimensions that matter far more than what meets the eye. Your faith is being strengthened through testing. Your patience is being refined through delays. Your discernment is being sharpened through having to distinguish between divine timing and human impatience. Your capacity to trust is being expanded through having to believe without seeing. Hit that notification bell if you want to be among the first to receive these deeper spiritual insights. There's something powerful about getting this content when you're most ready to receive it. And that bell ensures these messages reach you at exactly the right moment in your spiritual journey. These invisible qualities you're developing will determine not just whether you receive what you're hoping for, but whether you can maintain it once it arrives. The person who gets their dream job without developing discipline will likely lose it. The individual who attracts their ideal relationship without working on their own emotional maturity will probably sabotage it. The entrepreneur who experiences sudden wealth without building wisdom around money management will often find themselves back where they started. This is why divine timing protects you from premature blessings that would actually harm your long-term growth. Every day that seems like delay is actually another day of root development, ensuring that when your manifestation finally appears, it has the foundation necessary to thrive permanently rather than temporarily. Now, I want to reveal something that will completely shift how you view those moments when God seems to withdraw his obvious presence from your life, and why these periods often indicate that you're ready for the next level of spiritual maturity. Write in the comments, growing deep roots, if you're recognizing how this invisible foundation work is actually preparing you for something far greater than what you originally imagined. There's a pivotal moment in every spiritual journey that most people misinterpret entirely, and it often becomes the make or break point in their relationship with divine timing. It's that moment when God seems to step back, when the obvious signs disappear, when the hand-holding stops, and you're left to navigate with only the internal compass you've been developing. Your first instinct might be to panic, to assume you've done something wrong, or that God has abandoned you. But what's actually happening is far more profound and encouraging than you realize. When a loving parent watches their child take their first steps alone, they don't hover with their hands constantly ready to catch them. They step back, creating space for the child to demonstrate the balance and coordination they've been developing. This stepping back isn't neglect, it's confidence. It's the parent saying, "I believe you're ready to walk on your own now." Divine silence operates on exactly the same principle. When God withdraws his obvious, perceptible presence, it's not punishment or abandonment, it's divine confidence in your spiritual maturity. Think about how a masterful teacher conducts an exam. They don't constantly whisper answers or provide hints during the test. They remain quiet, allowing students to demonstrate what they've learned. This silence isn't cruelty. It's the ultimate expression of trust in the educational process. The teacher believes that the student has absorbed enough knowledge to succeed independently. Your spiritual journey includes these same examination periods where you're given the opportunity to prove to yourself that your faith has become genuine, internal, and unshakable. The transformation that occurs during these silent seasons is extraordinary because it reveals the difference between dependent faith and mature faith. Dependent faith needs constant reassurance, obvious signs, and regular emotional highs to continue believing. Mature faith, however, has developed an internal knowing that doesn't waver. Based on external circumstances, it's learned to operate from certainty rather than hope, from inner conviction rather than outer validation. This is where authentic spiritual power reveals itself, not in dramatic displays or constant miracles, but in the quiet persistence of someone who continues believing, acting, and expecting good things, even when there's no obvious evidence to support their position. True faith doesn't need an audience or applause. It doesn't require daily confirmation or spectacular demonstrations. It simply knows, and from that knowing, it acts with unwavering consistency. The hidden truth that emerges from these testing periods is that you've been developing spiritual muscles you didn't even know you had. Every day you chose faith over fear during uncertain times. Every moment you selected gratitude over complaint when things seemed stagnant. Every decision to continue acting from love when love wasn't being obviously returned. These weren't just good choices. They were training sessions that built unshakable spiritual strength. Behind the scenes of these quiet seasons, you're actually being prepared for levels of blessing and responsibility that would have overwhelmed your previous version of yourself. The person who needs constant divine hand-holding isn't ready to handle major manifestations. But the individual who can maintain faith, joy, and purposeful action, even during divine silence, has developed the internal infrastructure necessary to steward significant blessings wisely. Your journey through these examination periods reveals something beautiful about the nature of divine relationship. It's not about God controlling every detail of your experience, but about you developing enough spiritual maturity to co-create with divine intelligence. When you can maintain alignment with love, truth, and wisdom, even when you can't sense God's obvious presence, you've graduated to a level of partnership that allows for much greater manifestations. The impact of this realization extends far beyond your current situation. Once you understand that divine silence equals divine trust, you stop interpreting quiet seasons as problems to solve and start recognizing them as opportunities to demonstrate the spiritual growth you've achieved. You begin to welcome these periods because you know they signal that you're ready for your next level of evolution. Now I want to explore what happens when you truly embrace this mature approach to faith, and how it fundamentally changes not just what you receive, but how you receive it and what you do with it once it arrives. Write in the comments, "I'm ready for the exam," if you're beginning to see how these silent seasons are actually promoting you to higher levels of spiritual responsibility and capability. When you step into this mature understanding of faith, something fascinating happens to your relationship with time itself. You begin to realize that one of the greatest sources of spiritual frustration comes from trying to force eternal realities into linear human timeframes. We live in a world obsessed with schedules, deadlines, and instant gratification, but divine intelligence operates from a completely different paradigm. The realm of eternal timing where everything unfolds according to perfect orchestration rather than human urgency. Imagine trying to conduct a symphony using a stopwatch instead of listening to the music. You'd miss the natural flow, the crescendos, the perfectly timed pauses that make the performance magical. This is exactly what happens when you insist on measuring divine timing with human clocks. God doesn't operate in minutes and hours. God operates in moments of readiness, seasons of preparation, and cycles of consciousness expansion. The transformation that occurs when you release your attachment to human schedules is profound. Suddenly, you're no longer anxiously checking your watch, wondering why your breakthrough is taking so long. Instead, you're actively participating in your own preparation, trusting that there's a cosmic orchestration happening that's far more intelligent and comprehensive than anything your limited perspective could plan. This shift in mindset reveals a hidden truth about how divine responses actually work. God's answers aren't delayed by external circumstances or cosmic inefficiency. They're precisely timed to arrive when your consciousness has expanded enough to properly receive and maintain them. Think about it. What good would it do to receive $1 million opportunity if you still had a poverty mindset? How beneficial would the perfect relationship be if you hadn't yet learned to love yourself? What impact would a leadership position have if you weren't ready to serve others with wisdom and humility? The journey towards spiritual maturity teaches you that divine timing is actually divine protection disguised as delay. Every day that passes between your request and its fulfillment is another day of internal development that ensures you'll be able to handle what's coming. Behind the scenes, your consciousness is being expanded, your character is being refined, and your capacity to steward blessings is being increased. What's particularly beautiful about this process is how it reveals the sophisticated intelligence behind divine timing. While you're focused on when something will happen, God is orchestrating how it will happen in a way that creates the maximum positive impact not just for you, but for everyone whose life will be touched by your blessing. The delay you're experiencing might be because other people in your story aren't ready yet, or because circumstances need to align in a way that creates lasting success rather than temporary achievement. This is why forced timing almost always creates complications. When you push ahead of divine timing, you often find yourself trying to maintain something artificially, like holding together a house of cards in a windstorm. But when divine timing brings something into your life, it arrives with its own support system, its own sustainability, and its own natural momentum that carries it forward effortlessly. For those ready to dive deeper into these life-changing spiritual principles, subscribing means you'll never miss content designed to help you align with divine flow, rather than fighting against it. Each video builds on these foundations, offering practical tools for living in harmony with God's perfect timing. The decisions you make during these alignment periods are crucial because they're literally programming your consciousness to match the frequency of what you're asking for. Every choice to trust the process, every moment you select patience over panic, every decision to remain grateful despite apparent delays. These aren't just good spiritual practices, they're actively preparing your internal receiver to tune into the exact frequency where your blessing exists. Your willingness to surrender human timing for divine timing becomes a form of spiritual currency that purchases not just what you originally wanted, but upgrades to versions you never even knew were possible. The job becomes a calling. The relationship becomes a partnership in purpose. The financial breakthrough becomes generational wealth. The healing becomes a testimony that helps others find their own restoration. Now, I want to explore something that might completely revolutionize how you understand the relationship between your current circumstances and your future manifestations, particularly how apparent limitations often serve as launching pads for unlimited possibilities. Write in the comments, divine timing is perfect timing. If you're ready to fully surrender your human schedule to trust in the cosmic orchestration that's working on your behalf right now, there's a profound lesson hidden in one of the most famous stories of faith and timing in human history, and understanding it will completely transform how you view your current waiting period. Abraham received a promise from God about having a son, but that promise came with no timeline, no specific date, no detailed schedule. Years passed, and Abraham began to question whether he had heard correctly. The human tendency to doubt divine timing when human timing seems to make more sense became too strong to resist. In his impatience, Abraham took matters into his own hands and had a son through Hagar, creating what he thought was the fulfillment of God's promise. But this premature action, born from the inability to wait for divine timing, created complications that lasted for generations. Isaac, the true fulfillment of the promise, came years later when both Abraham and Sarah had developed the spiritual maturity necessary to raise a child who would carry the weight of divine destiny. The hidden truth in this story reveals why divine timing often requires what seems like impossible patience. From a human perspective, those years of waiting weren't empty time or divine forgetfulness. They were transformation years, character-building years, faith-strengthening years. Abraham had to evolve from someone who wanted to be a father into someone who was ready to father a nation. The promise wasn't just about having a child. It was about becoming the kind of person who could properly steward the responsibility that came with that blessing. Your journey follows the same pattern. What you're waiting for isn't just about receiving something external. It's about becoming someone internal. The delay you're experiencing is developing spiritual qualities in you that will be essential for handling what's coming. Patience, trust, perseverance, faith that operates without evidence. These aren't just nice character traits. They're the very foundation that will support your manifestation when it arrives. Behind the scenes of your waiting period, you're being enrolled in a divine curriculum that's custom designed for your specific destiny. Every test of your patience is building your capacity to handle delays in the future. Every moment you choose trust over doubt is strengthening your spiritual immune system against fear. Every decision to remain grateful during apparent lack is programming your consciousness to operate from abundance, regardless of circumstances. Nature provides the perfect template for understanding this spiritual rhythm because it operates according to principles that never change, never rush, and never fail. You've never seen a farmer plant seeds in January and expect harvest in February. You've never witnessed a tree trying to rush its fruit to ripen ahead of schedule. The natural world understands something that humans often forget. There are seasons for everything, and attempting to bypass these seasons doesn't create efficiency, it creates destruction. Spring is for planting, summer is for growing, autumn is for harvesting, and winter is for rest and preparation. Each season serves a purpose that cannot be skipped or shortened without compromising the entire cycle. Your spiritual life operates according to these same immutable rhythms. You're currently in whatever season is necessary for your ultimate harvest, and trying to force a different season will only damage the very thing you're trying to cultivate. The transformation that occurs when you align yourself with natural spiritual rhythms is extraordinary. Instead of fighting against the current season, you begin to cooperate with it. If you're in a planting season, you plant with enthusiasm. If you're in a growing season, you nurture with patience. If you're in a winter season, you rest and prepare with wisdom. This alignment eliminates the friction that comes from wanting to be somewhere other than where you are. What's particularly beautiful about embracing these natural cycles is how it reveals the intelligence behind apparent delays. A farmer doesn't view winter as a problem to solve or evidence that spring will never come. Winter is simply part of the rhythm that makes spring possible. Your current season, regardless of how challenging or quiet it might feel, is serving a purpose in the larger cycle of your spiritual development. The impact of this realization extends far beyond just accepting your current circumstances. When you understand that your life follows natural spiritual seasons, you begin to make decisions that support the current season. Rather than fighting against it, you start preparing for the next season while fully engaging with the present one. Now, I want to reveal something that will completely shift your perspective on what's actually happening during those seasons that feel like nothing is growing, and why these apparent dormant periods often precede the most explosive growth phases of your entire journey. Write in the comments, "I trust the seasons," if you're ready to embrace whatever spiritual season you're currently in and work with it rather than against it. There's a profound truth that reveals itself when you look at the stories of people who received everything they wanted before they were ready to handle it. Lottery winners who end up bankrupt within a few years, talented individuals who achieve fame too early and struggle with the pressure, entrepreneurs who scale too quickly and watch their businesses collapse. These aren't isolated incidents. They're examples of a spiritual principle that most people don't understand. Premature blessings often become heavy burdens because the consciousness that attracted them hasn't yet developed the wisdom necessary to sustain them. This is where divine delays reveal themselves as divine protection. Every day that passes between your request and its fulfillment is another day of preparation, another day of character development, another day of building the internal infrastructure necessary to not just receive your blessing, but to multiply it and share it wisely. God isn't withholding your good. God is protecting you from receiving something that could actually derail your journey if it arrived before you were spiritually equipped to handle it. Think about the decisions you were making 5 years ago compared to the wisdom you have today. Would you trust your 5 years ago self with the responsibilities and opportunities you can handle now? Probably not. This is exactly why divine timing operates according to consciousness. Development rather than calendar dates. You're being prepared not just to get what you want, but to become someone who can maintain it, grow it, and use it to bless others. The transformation that occurs when you understand this protective aspect of divine timing is remarkable. Instead of feeling frustrated by delays, you begin to feel grateful for them. Instead of interpreting waiting as punishment, you start recognizing it as preparation. Instead of thinking God has forgotten you, you realize God is investing in you at levels you can't even comprehend. But here's where the journey becomes truly sacred, and where most people miss the deepest spiritual opportunity available to them. When you shift your perspective from viewing waiting as something you endure to something you transform into offering, the entire experience becomes a form of continuous prayer. Your patience becomes worship. Your trust becomes communion. Your faithfulness during delays becomes a living sacrifice that actually accelerates your spiritual development. Behind the scenes of this transformation, something beautiful happens to your relationship with the divine. You stop bargaining and start surrendering. You stop demanding timelines and start trusting the process. You stop measuring your spiritual progress by external manifestations and start recognizing the internal growth that's occurring. The waiting period becomes a sacred altar where you offer your anxiety, your impatience, and your need to control, and in return, you receive peace, strength, and unshakable faith. This shift in mindset reveals a hidden truth about the nature of authentic spiritual power. The person who can remain joyful, grateful, and purposeful during seasons of apparent lack has developed a form of inner wealth that no external circumstance can touch. They've learned to find completeness in communion with the divine rather than needing external validation to feel secure. This internal transformation is actually more valuable than whatever they were originally asking for. Your journey through these waiting periods is teaching you something that will serve you for the rest of your life: how to maintain inner peace regardless of outer circumstances. This isn't just a nice spiritual quality, it's a superpower that will influence every area of your future. The person who can stay centered during delays will also be able to stay grounded during success. The individual who can trust God during apparent lack will also be able to manage abundance with wisdom. The impact of converting your waiting time into sacred offering extends far beyond your personal spiritual development. When you live from this level of faith and surrender, you become a living example to others of what's possible. Your peace during trials becomes a testimony. Your trust during delays becomes an inspiration. Your joy during challenges becomes a light that guides others through their own dark seasons. Now I want to explore something that might completely revolutionize your understanding of what's actually happening in the invisible realm while you're waiting, and why your continued faith during these periods creates a spiritual momentum that compounds exponentially. Write in the comments, "My waiting is worship," if you're ready to transform your current season of delay into a sacred offering that deepens your relationship with the divine while preparing you for unprecedented blessings. When you truly understand the active nature of spiritual patience, it transforms from something you endure into something you actively practice as a form of living prayer. This isn't the passive resignation that most people mistake for patience, sitting around hoping things will eventually work out. True spiritual patience is a dynamic force that's constantly building, creating, and constructing your future reality through sustained faith and unwavering trust. Every moment you choose to maintain confidence despite appearances, every decision to remain grateful when logic suggests otherwise, every choice to trust the process when your mind wants to panic. These aren't just good spiritual behaviors, they're literal building blocks being placed in the foundation of your ultimate manifestation. Think of it like this: each day of faithful waiting is like depositing spiritual currency into an account that's earning compound interest in dimensions you can't see. Your patience isn't passive time wasting, it's active investment in your future. Behind the scenes of your steadfast faith, there's a construction project happening that would blow your mind if you could witness it from a spiritual perspective. Your sustained trust is actually authorizing divine intelligence to move mountains, rearrange circumstances, and coordinate events in ways that will astound you when they finally come together. The hidden truth about what happens during these waiting periods reveals why your patience is so crucial to the final outcome. While you're maintaining faith and refusing to give up, there are invisible spiritual processes working on your behalf 24 hours a day. Obstacles that would have blocked your path are being quietly removed. People who will play important roles in your story are being prepared and positioned. Resources that you'll need are being gathered and allocated. Timing sequences are being calibrated so that when everything comes together, it creates maximum impact with minimum resistance. Your decision to remain patient during these orchestration periods is absolutely critical, because impatience creates interference in these delicate spiritual processes. When you start forcing doors, pushing timelines, or trying to make things happen through human effort alone, you're essentially telling divine intelligence to step aside while you handle things yourself. But your limited perspective can only see a tiny fraction of what needs to be coordinated for your highest good. The transformation that occurs when you truly surrender to this invisible divine coordination is profound. You begin to relax into a flow state where you're still taking inspired action, but you're not carrying the burden of trying to control outcomes. You start to feel the difference between effortless action that's aligned with divine timing and forced action that's driven by impatience or fear. There's a lightness, a natural momentum that accompanies divine timing that feels completely different from the exhausting effort required to push against spiritual current. Behind the scenes of your patient waiting, there's also profound internal work happening that's preparing you to receive at levels you've never experienced before. Your capacity to trust is being expanded. Your ability to remain peaceful during uncertainty is being strengthened. Your skill at recognizing divine guidance is being refined. Your confidence in spiritual law is being established. All of these internal developments are essential preparation for handling the magnitude of blessing that's being prepared for you. What's particularly beautiful about this process is how it reveals the sophisticated intelligence behind divine timing. While you might see only delay, God sees the intricate coordination required to bring you not just what you asked for, but the upgraded version that serves your highest evolution. The person who needed your services isn't ready yet. The market conditions that will support your venture are still developing. The relationships that will multiply your impact are still being formed. The consciousness shift that will make everything effortless is still in progress. Your journey through these preparation periods is also developing something that will serve you far beyond this current manifestation. Unshakable faith in the spiritual process itself. Once you witness how perfectly divine timing orchestrates your current breakthrough, you'll never again panic. During future waiting periods, you'll have experiential knowledge that God's delays are always purposeful, protective, and perfectly coordinated. Now, I want to reveal something that might surprise you about the specific spiritual mechanics of how your maintained faith during these waiting periods actually accelerates the manifestation process in ways that forcing or rushing never could. Write in the comments, "I trust the invisible work," if you're beginning to sense the profound spiritual coordination that's happening behind the scenes of your current waiting period. The spiritual mechanics of how sustained faith accelerates manifestation reveals something that completely revolutionizes most people's understanding of prayer itself. When you shift from praying to get something to praying to become one with divine will, the entire dynamic changes. Instead of trying to convince God to change circumstances, you're allowing God to transform your consciousness. Instead of focusing on external outcomes, you're seeking internal alignment. This fundamental shift in the purpose of prayer creates a spiritual momentum that's far more powerful than any amount of begging, pleading, or spiritual negotiating. The transformation that occurs when you approach prayer as communion rather than petition is extraordinary. You stop treating God like a cosmic vending machine where you insert enough faith coins and expect your desired outcome to drop down. Instead, you begin to recognize prayer as an intimate conversation with divine intelligence, where the goal isn't to change God's mind, but to align your heart with God's heart. This shift in mindset creates a resonance that naturally attracts what belongs to you without the exhausting effort of trying to force spiritual law to bend to your timeline. Behind the scenes of this deeper prayer practice, something profound happens to your relationship with uncertainty. When your primary goal becomes unity with divine will rather than getting specific results, you develop a peace that transcends understanding. You're no longer anxiously monitoring whether your prayers are working because your connection with the divine becomes the evidence you need. The communion itself becomes the answer, and from that state of inner fulfillment, external manifestations flow naturally. There's a hidden truth about spiritual forces that most people never discover because they're too focused on what they can see and control. Right now, there are invisible tides carrying your good toward you through channels that operate beyond human perception or manipulation. Just like ocean currents move massive amounts of water without any effort from the water itself, spiritual currents are moving opportunities, resources, connections, and solutions in your direction through divine intelligence that never rests. Your journey toward understanding this invisible circulation requires releasing the illusion that you must make everything happen through personal effort alone. The person who's constantly striving, pushing, and forcing is actually working against these natural spiritual currents. It's like swimming upstream against a powerful river instead of learning to navigate with the flow. When you trust in divine circulation, you position yourself to receive what's already moving toward you, rather than exhausting yourself trying to chase after what seems distant. The decisions you make during these periods of trusting invisible forces are crucial because they determine whether you're aligned with spiritual flow or fighting against it. Every choice to remain grateful despite appearances, every moment you select faith over fear, every decision to act from love rather than lack, these create a spiritual frequency that magnetizes your good toward you through the most efficient pathways possible. What's particularly beautiful about this process is how it reveals the sophisticated intelligence behind divine orchestration. While you're learning to trust invisible tides, those same forces are coordinating circumstances, timing, and people in ways that will create the most beneficial outcome for everyone involved. Your blessing isn't coming at someone else's expense. It's part of a larger pattern of abundance that lifts everyone it touches. The impact of embracing this trust in invisible spiritual forces extends far beyond your current situation. You begin to live with a confidence that comes from knowing you're supported by intelligence far greater than your own planning ability. You start making decisions from inner knowing rather than external pressure. You develop the ability to remain peaceful during apparent delays because you understand that movement is happening in dimensions you can't perceive. This understanding also reveals why forcing and manipulating never create lasting results. When you try to make things happen through pure human effort, you're working only with visible forces and limited perspective. But when you align with divine circulation, you're tapping into infinite intelligence that can coordinate factors you couldn't even imagine needing to consider. Now, I want to explore something that will completely transform how you recognize when these invisible forces are beginning to manifest in your visible experience, and the subtle signs that indicate your breakthrough is closer than you might think. Write in the comments, "I flow with divine current," if you're ready to stop swimming upstream and start trusting the invisible spiritual forces that are already working to bring your highest good into manifestation. There's a moment in every spiritual awakening when you realize that the physical world you see around you is actually the last place where change occurs, not the first. Everything that manifests in your visible experience has already been perfectly formed in the invisible realm of consciousness, emotion, and spiritual reality. This revelation completely transforms how you understand the relationship between your inner world and your outer circumstances. Instead of waiting for external evidence to believe in change, you begin to recognize that internal transformation is the actual cause of everything that will eventually appear in your physical experience. This principle explains why some people seem to effortlessly attract what they desire, while others struggle endlessly with the same goals. The difference isn't in their external actions or circumstances. It's in their consciousness. The person who easily manifests abundance has already become abundant in their thinking, feeling, and being. The individual who naturally attracts loving relationships has first cultivated love within themselves. The entrepreneur who consistently creates successful ventures has developed an internal mindset of innovation and value creation that expresses itself through their external work. Your journey toward understanding this invisible to visible process reveals something that might initially challenge your logical mind, but will ultimately liberate your spiritual potential. Everything you're currently seeking already exists in perfect form within the spiritual dimension of reality. That dream job, ideal relationship, financial breakthrough, health restoration, creative project, it's not somewhere out there waiting to be created. It already exists as spiritual fact, and your role is not to make it happen, but to align your consciousness with the frequency where it already lives. Think of this like tuning into a radio station. The music isn't created when you find the right frequency. The music was already broadcasting, and your tuning process simply allows you to receive what was always available. Your prayers, desires, and dreams are actually your soul's recognition of what already belongs to you in the spiritual realm. The longing you feel isn't for something absent. It's your consciousness trying to tune into something present, but currently outside your perceptual range. Behind the scenes of this tuning process, every day you maintain faith, despite contrary appearances, is actually adjusting your internal frequency to match your spiritual reality. When you choose gratitude over complaint, you're tuning in. When you select love over fear, you're tuning in. When you maintain vision despite current circumstances, you're tuning in. These aren't just positive thinking exercises, they're precise. Spiritual technologies for aligning with frequencies where your good already exists. The transformation that occurs when you truly grasp this principle is profound because it eliminates the exhausting sense that you must create everything from scratch. Instead of feeling like you're pushing against the universe, you begin to feel like you're uncovering treasures that were hidden in plain sight. The stress of making things happen is replaced by the joy of allowing things to reveal themselves. The anxiety of not knowing if your dreams are possible dissolves into the certainty that they're inevitable once you achieve the proper alignment. This understanding also reveals why forcing and rushing are so counterproductive in spiritual manifestation. When you try to make something happen through willpower alone, you're actually broadcasting a frequency of lack and desperation that repels what you're seeking. But when you operate from the knowing that your good already exists and is naturally moving toward you, you emit a frequency of abundance and certainty that magnetizes your desires into visible form. The hidden truth about timing becomes clear when you understand this pre-existing spiritual reality. Divine timing isn't about God deciding when to create your blessing. It's about the perfect coordination required for your consciousness to align with what already exists. The delay you experience isn't God withholding your good. It's the time required for your internal frequency to stabilize at the level where your good becomes visible and sustainable. Your decisions during this alignment period are absolutely crucial because they determine how quickly you achieve the consciousness shift that makes manifestation inevitable. Every choice to believe in what you can't yet see, every moment you act as if your good is already on its way, every decision to live from the end rather than from current circumstances. These are all rapid acceleration techniques for tuning into the frequency of your desired reality. Now, I want to explore something that might completely revolutionize your understanding of how close you actually are to breakthrough and the subtle signs that indicate you're already operating in the frequency range where your manifestation is about to become visible. Write in the comments, "My good already exists," if you're ready to shift from trying to create your blessing to simply aligning with the spiritual reality where it already lives and breathes. The closer you get to breakthrough, the more your old consciousness will fight to maintain its familiar patterns. And understanding this dynamic is crucial for navigating the final stages of your manifestation journey. There's a fascinating phenomenon that occurs right before spiritual breakthroughs that most people completely misinterpret. Just when you're on the verge of receiving what you've been waiting for, you might experience an unexpected surge of doubt, face seemingly random obstacles, or feel internal resistance that's stronger than anything you've felt in months. Instead of recognizing these as signs of imminent Breakthrough, most people panic and assume they're moving backward. The hidden truth behind this pre-manifestation turbulence is that your old consciousness is making its final stand before surrendering to the new reality you've been cultivating. Think of it like the moment right before dawn, when the darkness seems most intense, or the way a storm often clears the air right before beautiful weather arrives. Your spiritual system is essentially upgrading its operating system, and just like any major software update, there can be some temporary glitches and resistance before everything runs smoother than ever. Behind the scenes of this apparent chaos, there's actually profound evidence that your internal frequency is shifting into alignment with your desired reality. The old thought patterns, emotional habits, and belief systems that have been keeping you tuned into your current circumstances are being overwritten by the new consciousness you've been developing. This process can feel uncomfortable because you're literally releasing versions of yourself that no longer serve your evolving destiny. Your journey through these pre-breakthrough challenges requires a completely different mindset than most people employ. Instead of interpreting obstacles as evidence that you're off track, you begin to recognize them as confirmation that you're getting close to your target. Instead of letting increased doubt convince you to give up, you understand that doubt is often the last defense mechanism of consciousness that's about to be transformed. Instead of seeing unexpected problems as punishment, you realize they're often the final clearing required before your new reality can stabilize. The transformation that occurs when you maintain faith through these apparent setbacks is remarkable because it demonstrates that your spiritual development has reached the level where external circumstances can no longer dictate your internal state. You've become someone who can remain centered during chaos, grateful during delays, and confident during uncertainty. This level of spiritual maturity is actually a prerequisite for handling the blessings that are about to manifest. What's particularly interesting about authentic spiritual manifestations is how differently they arrive compared to what most people expect. If you're waiting for trumpets, flashing lights, or dramatic announcements, you might miss the gentle way that real miracles typically enter your experience. Divine interventions usually come with the quiet naturalness of sunrise, the soft inevitability of spring following winter, the gentle persistence of love overcoming fear. They arrive so organically that you might initially wonder if they're really miraculous at all. This subtle quality of authentic manifestation serves as built-in protection against ego inflation and spiritual materialism. When something arrives with divine timing through divine means, it comes wrapped in humility, gratitude, and a deep sense of rightness that keeps your heart focused on the source rather than the gift. The person who receives their breakthrough this way doesn't become prideful about their manifestation abilities. They become more reverent toward the intelligence that orchestrated everything so perfectly. The impact of recognizing this gentle nature of divine intervention completely transforms how you watch for your breakthrough. Instead of scanning the horizon for dramatic events, you begin to notice the subtle shifts, the small openings, the quiet conversations, the unexpected encounters that feel somehow significant. You develop sensitivity to the whispered invitations, the soft nudges, the gentle redirections that guide you toward what's been prepared for you. Your decisions during these delicate manifestation moments are crucial because authentic breakthroughs often require a response that's as gentle and natural as their arrival. Forcing, grabbing, or trying to accelerate what's naturally unfolding can actually disrupt the very process that's bringing your good into form. Learning to recognize and cooperate with the gentle rhythm of divine manifestation becomes an art form that serves you throughout your entire spiritual journey. Now, I want to explore something that might surprise you about what happens when you finally learn to flow with this gentle divine timing, and how it creates a completely different quality of life that goes far beyond just getting what you want. Write in the comments, "I recognize the gentle signs," if you're beginning to notice the subtle ways that your breakthrough might already be announcing itself through quiet shifts and natural openings rather than dramatic events. When you truly understand the gentle nature of divine manifestation, something profound shifts in how you express your faith. And this shift marks the difference between someone who believes in miracles and someone who becomes a living miracle. Most people treat faith like a mental exercise. They think the right thoughts, speak the right words, and then sit back waiting for results. But authentic spiritual faith is a dynamic force that moves through every aspect of your being, transforming not just what you think about your desires, but how you walk, talk, and live, as if those desires are already fulfilled realities. The transformation from passive belief to active faith is one of the most powerful shifts you can make in your spiritual development. Instead of hoping something will happen, you begin operating from the certainty that it's already happening. Instead of waiting for evidence to believe, you become the evidence through your daily choices and behaviors. This isn't about pretending or deluding yourself. It's about aligning your entire being with the spiritual reality you've been cultivating in consciousness. Behind the scenes of this activated faith, something remarkable occurs in the invisible realm where all manifestation begins. When you consistently hold an image in your mind, combined with the feeling of already having received it, you're creating what could be called a spiritual template or mental equivalent. This isn't just positive thinking, it's actually programming the creative forces of the universe with a precise blueprint that physical reality will eventually match with mathematical certainty. Your journey toward creating these mental equivalents requires understanding that consciousness isn't separate from the world you experience. Consciousness is the invisible substance from which your entire experience is formed. Every sustained thought pattern, every consistently held image, every regularly felt emotion is literally shaping the molecular structure of your future circumstances. The person who maintains the mental equivalent of health in their consciousness will find their body conforming to that template. The individual who holds the mental equivalent of prosperity will discover opportunities and resources flowing toward them naturally. The decisions you make during this template creation process are absolutely crucial because the universe responds to the totality of your consciousness, not just the parts you're paying attention to. If you're consciously visualizing success while unconsciously feeling unworthy, you're creating mixed templates that produce inconsistent results. This is why the internal work of aligning your thoughts, feelings, and actions becomes so important. You're literally programming the blueprint for your future experience. What's particularly powerful about this understanding is how it reveals why some people seem to effortlessly manifest while others struggle, despite seemingly doing all the right spiritual practices. The difference lies in the consistency and emotional intensity with which they hold their mental equivalents. The person who casually thinks about their desires once a day creates weak templates. But the individual who lives, breathes, and embodies their desired reality creates templates so strong that manifestation becomes inevitable. The impact of this active faith approach extends far beyond just getting what you want. When you live as if your good is already assured, you develop a confidence and peace that becomes magnetic to others. People are drawn to individuals who operate from certainty rather than need, from abundance rather than lack, from faith rather than fear. Your very presence begins to inspire others to expand their own sense of what's possible. This embodiment of faith also creates a powerful feedback loop that accelerates your manifestation process. The more you act from the end result, the more natural it feels. The more natural it feels, the less resistance you have to receiving it. The less resistance you have, the faster it can manifest. You're literally training your consciousness to accept your good as normal rather than miraculous, which removes the unconscious barriers that often delay manifestation. Behind the scenes of this process, you're also developing something that will serve you far beyond your current goals. The ability to consciously create your experience rather than unconsciously react to circumstances. Once you understand how mental equivalents work, you realize that you've been creating templates your entire life, but most of them have been unconscious and often based on fear, lack, or limitation. Learning to create deliberate templates based on your highest vision becomes a spiritual superpower that influences every area of your life. Now, I want to explore something that reveals the deepest spiritual principle behind all manifestation, and why understanding this principle transforms you from someone who occasionally experiences miracles to someone who lives in a state of continuous divine flow. Write in the comments, "I embody my faith," if you're ready to move beyond hoping for your breakthrough and start living as if it's already done. Zeal in the spiritual realm. The deepest spiritual principle behind all manifestation reveals itself when you understand that every "not yet" from the universe is actually "I love you too much to let you have something that would hurt you." This isn't about God being controlling or withholding. It's about divine intelligence protecting you from receiving blessings that could become burdens if they arrive before you had developed the character necessary to handle them wisely. The millionaire who declares bankruptcy, the celebrity who struggles with addiction, the entrepreneur whose success destroys their relationships. These aren't failures of divine blessing. They're examples of what happens when external manifestation exceeds internal preparation. Your journey toward understanding this protective aspect of divine timing transforms your entire relationship with delays and apparent setbacks. Instead of interpreting "not yet" as punishment or evidence that you're not worthy, you begin to recognize it as loving preservation. Every day that passes between your request and its fulfillment is another day of character development, wisdom accumulation, and spiritual capacity expansion. The universe is essentially asking, are you ready to be trusted with this level of blessing? Can you handle this responsibility with grace? Will this addition to your life serve your highest evolution or create complications? Behind the scenes of this preparation process, there's profound work happening to align your internal character with your external desires. The person seeking financial abundance is being developed in areas of generosity, stewardship, and values-based decision-making. The individual praying for the right relationship is being grown in self-love, emotional maturity, and the capacity to give and receive love without manipulation. The entrepreneur waiting for their breakthrough is being prepared for leadership, responsibility, and the ability to create value that serves others rather than just personal gain. The transformation that occurs during these character-building seasons is often more valuable than the manifestation itself. You're developing qualities like patience, faith, perseverance, humility, and trust that will serve you throughout your entire life. These internal treasures become the foundation that ensures whatever you receive will be sustainable, meaningful, and blessing-producing rather than burden-creating. The person who develops deep character while waiting becomes someone who can maintain their blessings with wisdom rather than losing them through immaturity. What's particularly beautiful about this divine protection system is how it reveals the sophisticated love behind spiritual law. God isn't just interested in giving you what you want. God is committed to ensuring that what you receive serves your highest good and the good of everyone your life touches. This means that delays often protect not just you, but the people who will be affected by your success. The business that would have failed if started too early gets delayed until market conditions and your skill level can support sustainable growth. The relationship that would have been codependent gets postponed until both people develop healthy individual identities. Your decisions during these preparation periods are absolutely crucial because they determine not just when you'll receive your blessing, but what quality of person you'll be when it arrives. Every choice to remain grateful during delays, every moment you select growth over complaint, every decision to serve others while waiting for your own breakthrough, these are all character-building exercises that prepare you for greater responsibility and impact. The hidden truth about divine timing becomes clear when you realize that the universe operates on a principle of spiritual ecology. Everything must be in balance. If you're going to receive abundantly, you must also be prepared to give abundantly. If you're going to be trusted with influence, you must first develop integrity. If you're going to steward resources, you must first prove faithful with smaller amounts. The delay isn't random. It's calibrated to ensure that your receiving capacity matches your giving capacity. This understanding also reveals why forcing things before their time almost always creates complications. When you receive something before you've developed the character to handle it properly, you often end up struggling to maintain what should have been a blessing. But when divine timing brings something into your life, it arrives with all the internal preparation necessary to not just receive it, but to multiply it and share it wisely. The impact of embracing this character development perspective transforms waiting from suffering into anticipation. You begin to see each day of apparent delay as another day of preparation for something greater than you originally imagined. You start to trust that the universe is working not just to give you what you want, but to make you someone worthy of receiving and stewarding extraordinary blessings. Now, I want to explore something that might completely revolutionize your understanding of what it means to live in divine timing and how this creates a quality of life that transcends the usual cycles of wanting, getting, and wanting again. Write in the comments, "I'm growing into my blessing," if you're beginning to see how these preparation periods are actually developing the character qualities you'll need to handle your breakthrough with wisdom and grace. When you truly understand the character development aspect of divine timing, you discover there's a profound difference between holy patience and passive resignation, and this distinction determines whether your waiting period becomes a source of spiritual strength or spiritual defeat. Most people confuse patience with giving up, thinking that waiting means becoming passive, accepting less than they deserve, or surrendering their dreams to circumstances beyond their control. But sacred patience is actually one of the most active and powerful spiritual forces available to you. It's the difference between a person who stops swimming because the current is strong versus someone who learns to navigate with the current while maintaining their direction toward the destination. The transformation that occurs when you embrace holy patience reveals itself as a form of spiritual athleticism. Just like physical muscles grow stronger under resistance, your spiritual muscles develop power through the practice of maintaining faith while external circumstances seem to contradict your vision. Every day you choose to continue believing despite appearances. Every moment you select hope over cynicism. Every decision to keep taking inspired action, even when progress seems invisible. These are all strength training exercises for your soul that build the kind of unshakable faith that can move mountains. Behind the scenes of this active patience, there's profound spiritual work happening that goes far beyond just waiting for something to arrive. You're developing the capacity to hold steady in the face of uncertainty, to remain centered during chaos, and to maintain vision when everyone around you is focused on current limitations. These qualities become spiritual superpowers that serve you not just in manifesting your current desires, but in navigating every challenge and opportunity for the rest of your life. Your journey through these patience-building seasons teaches you something that most people never discover: the difference between forcing and allowing, between pushing and flowing, between demanding and receiving. Holy patience maintains direction without desperation, pursues goals without panic, and expects results without exigency. It's the spiritual equivalent of being a master sailor who can navigate any weather because they understand how to work with natural forces rather than fighting against them. What's particularly powerful about developing this sacred patience is how it affects the quality of what you eventually receive. Think about the difference between fruit that's been artificially ripened versus fruit that's been allowed to mature naturally on the tree. The forced fruit might look ready from the outside, but it lacks the depth of flavor, the nutritional value, and the lasting satisfaction of properly ripened fruit. Your spiritual manifestations follow exactly the same principle. Blessings that are rushed or forced might provide temporary satisfaction, but they often lack the richness, stability, and transformative power of those that have been allowed to develop through proper spiritual incubation. The hidden truth about this maturation process reveals why divine timing creates such superior results compared to human timing. While you're practicing holy patience, your blessing is developing layers of meaning, purpose, and impact that wouldn't be possible if it arrived prematurely. The relationship that comes through divine timing doesn't just provide companionship. It becomes a partnership in purpose that serves something greater than both individuals. The business opportunity that arrives at the right time doesn't just create income. It becomes a vehicle for service that fulfills your deepest sense of meaning. Your decisions during these ripening periods are crucial because they determine not just the timing of your breakthrough, but the quality and sustainability of what you receive. Every choice to remain faithful during delays, every moment you continue serving others while waiting for your own blessing, every decision to maintain gratitude despite temporary lack, these are all adding layers of depth and permanence to what's being prepared for you. The impact of understanding this spiritual maturation process completely transforms your relationship with waiting. Instead of viewing delays as obstacles to overcome, you begin to see them as essential ingredients in creating something far superior to what you originally imagined. You start to appreciate the invisible work that's happening during quiet seasons, knowing that this behind-the-scenes development is what makes the eventual manifestation not just meaningful, but transformational for everyone it touches. This perspective also reveals why people who learn to embrace divine timing often receive blessings that exceed their original expectations. The extra time allows divine intelligence to orchestrate upgrades, improvements, and enhancements that wouldn't have been possible if the manifestation had arrived according to human schedule. Now, I want to explore something that will reveal the ultimate secret of living in divine timing, and how this creates a state of being where you're no longer dependent on external manifestations for your sense of peace and fulfillment. Write in the comments, "I trust the ripening process," if you're beginning to appreciate how these seasons of patient development are creating something far richer and more permanent than anything that could be rushed into existence. The ultimate secret of living in divine timing reveals itself when you discover that you don't have to chase anything that truly belongs to you. There's a profound shift that occurs when you understand that divine intelligence is constantly orchestrating the crossing of paths that need to intersect, coordinating meetings between people who are meant to collaborate, and arranging circumstances that serve the highest good of everyone involved. This celestial synchronicity operates with a precision that would astound you if you could see it from a cosmic perspective, weaving together countless individual journeys into a tapestry of perfect timing that serves purposes far greater than any single person could plan. When your consciousness aligns with divine will, rather than personal agenda, something magical happens to how opportunities and relationships enter your life. Instead of the exhausting process of networking, pushing, and trying to make things happen through force, you begin to experience the effortless flow of authentic connections finding their way to you. The right mentor appears just when you need guidance. the perfect business partner manifests when you're ready to expand. The ideal opportunity presents itself precisely when you've developed the skills necessary to succeed with it. Behind the scenes of this divine coordination, there's an intelligence working on your behalf that sees connections and possibilities your limited perspective could never identify. While you're focused on your immediate needs and obvious solutions, divine intelligence is orchestrating introductions that will serve not just your current goals, but purposes you haven't even discovered yet. That casual conversation with a stranger might be the seed of your next breakthrough. That unexpected delay might be protecting you from a path that seemed right but would have led you away from your true destiny. Your journey toward understanding this principle transforms your entire approach to goal achievement and relationship building. Instead of desperately seeking and anxiously pursuing, you begin to focus on becoming someone worth finding. Instead of trying to force doors open, you concentrate on developing the qualities that naturally attract the right opportunities. Instead of chasing people who might be able to help you, you work on embodying the values and vision that magnetize like-minded individuals into your sphere. The transformation that occurs when you truly grasp this concept is profound because it eliminates the sense of lack and urgency that drives so much human striving. When you know that what belongs to you is actively seeking you, you can relax into a state of confident expectation rather than anxious pursuit. You begin to live from abundance rather than scarcity, from trust rather than fear, from magnetic attraction rather than desperate chase. What's particularly beautiful about this divine coordination is how it reveals the sophisticated intelligence behind spiritual law. The universe isn't randomly throwing people and opportunities in your direction. It's making precise calculations based on consciousness alignment, character development, timing readiness, and mutual benefit. The person who will become your next important connection is being prepared for that meeting, just as carefully as you are being prepared to receive what they have to offer. Your decisions during this alignment process are crucial, because they determine whether you're operating from your authentic divine identity or from ego-driven agendas. Every choice to be genuinely helpful rather than self-serving, every moment you focus on what you can give rather than what you can get, every decision to trust the process rather than force outcomes. These are all magnetic practices that align you with the frequency where your true spiritual inheritance can locate you. The hidden truth about spiritual inheritance is that it operates on a principle of recognition rather than acquisition. What truly belongs to you will recognize you when your consciousness has developed enough to recognize it in return. This mutual recognition creates connections and opportunities that feel natural, right, and sustainable rather than forced, artificial, or exhausting to maintain. The impact of living from this understanding creates a quality of life that transcends the usual cycles of wanting, seeking, and temporarily satisfying desires only to want again. When you know that your good is seeking you as actively as you're seeking it, you develop an inner peace and confidence that doesn't depend on external manifestations for validation. Now, I want to explore something that reveals the deepest spiritual truth about what happens when you completely surrender to this divine orchestration and how it creates a life experience that feels like a continuous miracle. Write in the comments, "My good is finding me," if you're ready to stop chasing what belongs to you and start trusting that divine timing is coordinating the perfect meetings and opportunities for your highest evolution. When you completely surrender to this divine orchestration, you discover something that fundamentally changes how you approach every goal and desire in your life. The deepest spiritual truth about forcing versus allowing reveals itself through the quality of what you receive and how much energy it requires to maintain. Everything that comes through forcing, manipulation, or getting ahead of divine timing creates an artificial situation that demands constant effort to sustain. It's like building a house of cards in a windstorm. You can make it work temporarily, but it requires exhausting vigilance and eventually collapses anyway. The transformation that occurs when you understand this principle is profound, because it explains why some people seem to struggle endlessly to maintain what they've achieved, while others seem to effortlessly sustain and multiply their blessings. The difference lies in whether their manifestations came through divine timing or human forcing. When something arrives through authentic spiritual flow, it comes with its own support system, its own momentum, and its own sustainability. It doesn't require you to constantly prop it up or defend it, because it has divine backing. Behind the scenes of forced manifestations, there's always underlying instability because they're built on artificial foundations. The relationship that was pushed into existence through manipulation lacks the natural chemistry that sustains love through challenges. The business opportunity that was seized prematurely doesn't have the market readiness or internal preparation necessary for long-term success. The financial breakthrough that came through shortcuts often disappears as quickly as it arrived because the consciousness that created it wasn't stable enough to maintain it. The biblical story of Abraham provides the perfect illustration of how spiritual impatience creates generational complications. When Abraham couldn't wait for God's promise of a son to unfold according to divine timing, he took matters into his own hands and had Ishmael through Hagar. From a human perspective, this seemed like a reasonable solution. He was getting older, Sarah was barren, and the promise seemed impossible. But this premature action, born from the inability to trust divine timing, created conflicts that lasted for thousands of years and continue to this day. Your journey toward understanding this principle reveals something crucial about the nature of authentic versus artificial manifestation. When Isaac was finally born according to divine timing, he carried a completely different quality than Ishmael. Isaac represented the fulfillment of divine promise, while Ishmael represented the product of human impatience. Both were blessings in their own way, but only one aligned with the deeper spiritual purpose that Abraham was meant to fulfill. The decisions you make when you're tempted to force outcomes ahead of divine timing will determine whether you create Isaac energy or Ishmael energy in your life. Every choice to push ahead because you're tired of waiting, every moment you compromise your values to speed up results, every decision to manipulate circumstances rather than trust the process, these create artificial manifestations that will require constant management and often generate unexpected complications. What's particularly revealing about this dynamic is how it affects not just the immediate outcome, but the entire trajectory of your life. When you receive something through divine timing, it often becomes a foundation for even greater blessings. But when you force something prematurely, you often find yourself spending years cleaning up the complications rather than building on the initial success. The forced promotion creates workplace conflicts. The rushed relationship leads to emotional drama. The shortcuts to wealth create legal or ethical problems. The hidden truth behind this principle is that divine timing doesn't just deliver what you want, it delivers what you want in a way that serves your highest evolution and contributes to the greater good. Human timing focuses on getting results as quickly as possible. Divine timing focuses on creating results that enhance rather than complicate your life journey. The extra time required for divine timing isn't delay. It's the incubation period necessary for creating something that will bless you for years, rather than burden you with maintenance issues. The impact of embracing this understanding transforms your entire relationship with goal achievement. Instead of focusing on how quickly you can make something happen, you begin to focus on how perfectly aligned you can become with what wants to happen through you. Instead of forcing doors open, you concentrate on becoming someone the right doors naturally open for. Now, I want to explore the ultimate revelation about what happens when you completely align with divine timing and how this creates a state of being where miracles become your natural way of life rather than rare exceptions. Write in the comments, I choose divine timing over shortcuts, if you're ready to release the temptation to force outcomes and trust that what comes through proper spiritual channels will be sustainable and blessed. When you completely align with divine timing, you discover something that transcends the usual relationship between time and manifestation entirely. The ultimate revelation about spiritual timing is that it doesn't just deliver what you want when you're ready. It transforms you into someone who lives in the eternal now, where every moment contains access to infinite spiritual resources. This isn't about waiting for some future moment when everything will be perfect. It's about recognizing that the present moment, properly understood and fully inhabited, is actually the gateway to timeless spiritual power. The transformation that occurs when you learn to live in this eternal now is extraordinary, because it eliminates the anxiety that comes from constantly monitoring whether your manifestations are arriving on schedule. Instead of dividing your life into waiting periods and receiving periods, you begin to understand that every moment is a receiving period when you're properly aligned with divine presence. The peace you've been seeking in future fulfillment becomes available right now. The abundance you've been trying to manifest reveals itself as already present in the form of infinite spiritual resources. Behind the scenes of this present moment awareness, something profound happens to your relationship with opportunities and doors that need to open in your life. When you're fully present rather than anxiously projecting into the future, you become sensitive to the natural rhythm of divine openings. You start to notice the difference between doors that swing open effortlessly and doors that require forcing. You develop the spiritual discernment to recognize authentic opportunities that align with your highest path versus artificial opportunities that might look good but would ultimately create complications. Your journey into this eternal now reveals why forced doors almost always lead to forced situations that require constant maintenance. When you push a door open before it's ready to open naturally, you're essentially overriding the divine coordination system that ensures everything works together harmoniously. The job you force your way into creates workplace stress. The relationship you manipulate into existence lacks natural chemistry. The financial opportunity you rush into, without proper timing, creates unexpected problems. The decisions you make from this present moment awareness are fundamentally different from decisions made from anxiety about the future or regret about the past. When you're fully present, you can feel the difference between inspired action and desperate action, between divine guidance and ego pushing, between opportunities that feel light and natural versus those that require heavy effort to pursue. This spiritual sensitivity becomes your internal GPS system for navigating life in perfect timing. What's particularly beautiful about living in the eternal now is how it reveals that divine timing isn't about waiting for some external moment to arrive. It's about aligning your consciousness with the timeless realm where all possibilities exist simultaneously. From this perspective, your good isn't coming to you from some distant future. It's emerging from the infinite potential that's always available in the present moment when you're properly tuned into divine frequency. The hidden truth about authentic opportunities is that they don't require selling, convincing, or forcing. When divine timing brings an opportunity into your experience, it feels natural, right, and aligned. The people involved are genuinely enthusiastic rather than resistant. The circumstances support the manifestation rather than creating obstacles. The timing feels perfect to everyone involved rather than convenient for just you. The impact of Living from this eternal now, while watching for natural door openings, creates a quality of life that feels miraculous even during ordinary moments. You're no longer desperately seeking extraordinary experiences to feel fulfilled because you've learned to find the extraordinary within the present moment. You're not anxiously waiting for your breakthrough because you understand that every moment of proper alignment is a breakthrough in itself. This understanding also reveals why people who learn to live in divine timing often seem to effortlessly attract opportunities while others struggle endlessly. They're not working harder or being more spiritual, they're simply more present, more aligned, and more sensitive to the natural flow of divine coordination that's always available to those who know how to receive it. Now, I want to explore the final and most profound truth about what happens when you completely surrender to this way of living, and how it creates a life where your very presence becomes a blessing that transforms everything it touches. Write in the comments, "I live in the eternal now," if you're ready to stop waiting for your life to begin when certain conditions are met, and start recognizing the infinite potential available in this very moment. When you completely surrender to living in divine timing, you develop an internal guidance system that's more reliable than any external advice or logical analysis you could ever receive. This guidance system operates through the presence or absence of deep inner peace when you're considering opportunities, decisions, or directions for your life. The profound truth about divine timing is that it always announces itself through peace, while ego-driven pursuits create anxiety, pressure, and a sense of urgency that feels heavy rather than light. The transformation that occurs when you learn to use peace as your primary decision-making tool is extraordinary, because it bypasses all the mental confusion and emotional manipulation that can cloud your judgment. When an opportunity is truly aligned with divine timing, you feel a deep sense of rightness, a quiet confidence, and a natural flow that doesn't require you to convince yourself or others that it's the right choice. Your entire being relaxes into the decision because every cell in your body recognizes divine alignment when it encounters it. Behind the scenes of this peace-guided living, you begin to understand something that revolutionizes your entire approach to manifestation and goal achievement. Divine timing operates with mathematical precision that surpasses human comprehension. Miracles aren't random events that sometimes happen early and sometimes late, depending on cosmic mood swings. They arrive with the exact timing required for maximum impact, perfect alignment, and optimal benefit for everyone involved in the manifestation. Your journey toward recognizing this cosmic punctuality reveals why apparent delays often indicate that you're actually early rather than late. When you understand that divine manifestations require the coordination of countless variables, your consciousness development, other people's readiness, market conditions, resource availability, timing sequences that serve multiple purposes simultaneously, you begin to appreciate the sophisticated intelligence that ensures everything comes together at the precise moment when success is inevitable rather than forced. The decisions you make, while learning to trust this divine precision, are crucial because they determine whether you're operating from faith in cosmic intelligence or from fear that somehow the universe has forgotten about you. Every choice to remain patient when logic suggests you should panic, every moment you select trust when evidence suggests worry, every decision to maintain peace when circumstances seem chaotic, these are all votes of confidence in the mathematical precision of spiritual law. What's particularly profound about this cosmic timing is how it reveals that what you call delays are actually proof of the intelligence working on your behalf. The same force that coordinates the movement of planets, the changing of seasons, and the beating of your heart is orchestrating the manifestation of your desires with equal precision. Nothing in the universe operates randomly, and your blessings are no exception to this universal order. The hidden truth about this perfect timing becomes clear When you witness how divine manifestations tend to arrive not just at the right moment for you, but at the right moment for everyone whose life will be touched by your blessing. The business opportunity that comes through divine timing doesn't just serve your financial needs. It provides value that others are perfectly positioned to receive. The relationship that manifests through proper spiritual channels doesn't just fulfill your desire for companionship. It creates a partnership that serves purposes neither person could have imagined individually. The impact of living with this understanding creates a deep relaxation in your nervous system because you're no longer carrying the burden of trying to make everything happen according to your limited perspective and timeline. You begin to feel held by an intelligence that's infinitely more sophisticated than your personal planning ability. And this feeling of being supported creates a confidence that attracts even more divine coordination into your experience. This peace-guided, precision-trusting way of living also reveals why people who align with divine timing often seem to live charmed lives where everything flows with almost supernatural ease. They're not more fortunate or more blessed. They've simply learned to cooperate with the natural rhythm of divine coordination rather than fighting against it through impatience, forcing, or anxiety-driven decision-making. Now, I want to explore something that brings us to the ultimate realization about divine timing and how understanding this final principle transforms you from someone who experiences occasional miracles to someone who becomes a miracle in motion. Write in the comments, "Peace guides my timing," if you're beginning to trust that inner peace is the most reliable indicator of whether you're aligned with divine coordination or operating from ego-driven urgency. The ultimate realization about divine timing brings us to something that completely transforms your relationship with loss, failure, and apparent setbacks. There's a profound spiritual principle that most people never discover, and understanding it eliminates one of the greatest sources of anxiety in human experience. Nothing that truly belongs to you by divine right can ever be permanently lost or destroyed. This isn't just comforting philosophy. It's spiritual law that operates with the same consistency as gravity or any other natural force. When you truly grasp this principle, something extraordinary happens to how you navigate life's inevitable changes and challenges. Those moments when opportunities seem to slip away, when relationships end, when plans fall through, when doors close unexpectedly. Instead of interpreting these as failures or punishments, you begin to recognize them as divine redirections that are protecting you from paths that would have ultimately limited your growth or taken you away from your highest destiny. Behind the scenes of every apparent loss, there's sophisticated spiritual intelligence working to ensure that you don't settle for less than what's truly meant for you. The job that got away was making room for the career that will fulfill your purpose. The relationship that ended was clearing space for the partnership that will serve your evolution. The opportunity that didn't materialize was protecting you from complications that would have distracted you from your real calling. Your journey toward understanding this divine protection system reveals something beautiful about the nature of authentic spiritual inheritance. What belongs to you carries a spiritual DNA that connects it to your consciousness regardless of external circumstances. Like a magnet that always finds metal, your true good will continue to seek you through whatever forms are necessary for your growth and the highest good of all involved. The transformation that occurs when you live from this understanding is profound because it eliminates the desperate clinging and anxious controlling that exhausts so many people. You begin to hold your goals and desires with open hands, pursuing them with enthusiasm while remaining detached from specific outcomes. You start to trust that if something leaves your life, it's creating space for something better, and if something stays, it's because it serves your highest evolution. This shift in perspective creates what can only be described as living in divine rhythm, a state where your personal Consciousness aligns so completely with God's eternal rhythm that anxiety about timing and outcomes simply dissolves. When you're flowing in divine rhythm, you're no longer fighting against the current of life. You're dancing with it. You're not pushing against doors that are meant to remain closed. You're walking through the ones that open naturally for you. The hidden truth about this divine rhythm is that it creates a flow state where right action occurs spontaneously without force or strain. You find yourself saying the right words at the right time without having to plan what to say. You meet the right people in unexpected places without having to network strategically. You receive the right information precisely when you need it without having to search frantically for answers. The decisions you make from this state of divine alignment have a completely different quality than decisions made from anxiety or desperation. They feel natural, effortless, and sustainable. They create outcomes that bless not just you, but everyone they touch. They generate results that require minimal maintenance because they're supported by the same intelligence that maintains the entire universe. What's particularly beautiful about living in divine rhythm is how it affects your impact on others. When you're no longer anxious about your own timing and outcomes, you become a source of peace and stability for people around you. Your presence begins to remind others that there's a trustworthy intelligence governing life, and this reminder often helps them relax into their own divine timing. The ultimate impact of embodying this principle transforms you from someone who occasionally experiences miracles to someone who becomes a miracle in motion. Your very way of being, peaceful during uncertainty, trusting during delays, grateful during apparent lack, becomes a living demonstration of what's possible when human consciousness aligns with divine wisdom. The final revelation that ties everything together is simply this. When you integrate all of these principles into your daily way of being, divine timing stops being something you have to think about and starts being who you are. You become someone who naturally flows with the rhythm of the universe, who instinctively recognizes divine opportunities, who automatically trusts the process even during challenging seasons. This isn't about perfection. It's about developing such a deep relationship with divine intelligence that your default response to life becomes faith rather than fear, patience rather than panic, gratitude rather than complaint. Living this way creates ripple effects that extend far beyond your personal manifestations. When you embody divine timing, you become a living reminder to others that there's a trustworthy intelligence governing life. Your peace during uncertainty gives others permission to stop struggling. Your trust during delays inspires others to examine their own relationship with divine timing. Your joy during ordinary moments awakens others to the extraordinary that's always available in the present. If you've found value in this exploration of divine timing and God's perfect coordination, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. These aren't just spiritual concepts we're discussing, they're practical tools for creating a life of flow, peace, and authentic manifestation. Each video builds on these foundational principles, offering deeper insights into how divine intelligence operates in every area of your experience. For those of you who stayed with me through this entire journey into understanding God's clock versus human time, I see you, and I honor your commitment to spiritual growth. Leave a comment saying, "Divine timing is my peace," so I know you received what was meant for you in this message. Your engagement helps this content reach others who need to hear that their timing isn't off. They're exactly where they need to be. If this conversation resonated with something deep in your soul, go ahead and hit that like button. It creates a beautiful connection between us and helps YouTube understand that this content serves people's spiritual hunger for truth and practical wisdom. There's a video right here that perfectly complements what we've explored today, diving even deeper into how to recognize when you're operating in divine flow versus when you're pushing against spiritual current. Click and continue with me over there, because your understanding of these principles is just beginning to unfold.